He found his dog after 5 years, but the dog didn't move. Jack's boots stop inches from the porch as the boards creak under his weight. The German Shepherd stands there, muscles tight, ears forward, not barking, not running, just watching. Somewhere behind the cabin, a door shifts softly in the wind, and the dog doesn't break eye contact. What would you do if your dog didn't come back to you? The truck engine ticked as it cooled, a faint metallic rhythm echoing into the trees. Jack Mercer didn't reach for the door handle right away. He sat there, hands resting on the wheel, fingers loose but ready. Eyes forward, not at the cabin, but through it. The morning light over the Idaho mountains came clean and thin, sliding through the pines in long, pale strips. It looked like the kind of morning that forgave things. When Jack had learned not to trust mornings like that. He listened first. Wind in the branches. A crow somewhere off to the east. Gravel settling under the truck tires. No claws. That was the first thing. Every time he came back, no matter how late, no matter how quiet he tried to be, there had always been that sound. Fast, heavy, unmistakable. Nails hitting hardwood. A body hitting the door from the inside with controlled force. Shadow didn't bark when Jack returned. He moved. That had been their agreement. Jack's jaw shifted slightly, just enough to tighten something deep under the skin. He reached down, picked up the keys, and slipped them into his pocket. Still no sound. He opened the truck door slowly. Not cautious. Never that word. Controlled. Boots met gravel. He paused again, scanning out of habit. Tree line, windows, one door frame, roof angle. Nothing moved where it shouldn't. But something was wrong. It wasn't the kind of wrong you could point at. Not yet. It was the absence of the thing that should have been there. Jack walked toward the cabin without rushing. He never rushed anymore. Not after Afghanistan. Not after learning how quickly motion turned into mistakes. The porch steps creaked under his weight. Same as always. The front door stood closed, locked. No scratches, no damage. He rested his hand lightly on the handle. Waited. Nothing. No shift inside. No weight against the other side. No breath pushing under the door. Jack turned the handle and stepped in. The silence hit him first. Not emptiness. Silence. The kind that felt arranged. The cabin smelled faintly of pine cleaner and something colder underneath it. Too clean. Not wrong in itself, but wrong for this place. Jack shut the door behind him without looking back. The room was in order. Chair pushed in, blanket folded on the armrest. Boots aligned by the wall. No fur caught in the corners of the rug. No overturned water bowl. No scratch marks near the frame. Shadow lived here. There should have been signs. Jack took 2 steps forward, slow enough that the floorboards didn't complain. His eyes moved, not scanning randomly, but in sequence. Entry, windows, corners, kitchen. The stainless steel bowl sat near the wall, full, water untouched, no dust disturbance around it, no paw marks. That wasn't right. Shadow drank after movement, after noise, after greeting. Jack crouched slightly, just enough to bring the bowl into a better angle of light. The surface of the water was still, not recently disturbed. He stood again, breathing steady, shoulders loose, but his body had already started adjusting, the old way. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a map began forming, timelines, entry points, possibilities. He moved toward the back of the cabin. The hallway felt longer than it should have. Halfway down, a sound flickered through him, rotor blades cutting through thin air. For a split second, his muscles tightened, fingers curling instinctively toward where a weapon used to sit. Then it was gone. Just wind pushing through the trees outside. Jack didn't react outwardly. He kept walking. The back door came into view, closed. But something about it. He stopped 3 steps short. His eyes dropped, not to the handle, not to the frame, to the wood near the base. There. Faint. Almost invisible unless you knew what to look for. Scratches. Not random. Not shallow. Deep enough to mark, controlled enough to repeat. Jack stepped closer, lowering himself slightly. The marks ran in short, angled lines, clustered near the bottom corner of the door. Not frantic, not scattered, directed. A dog trying to hold position, trying to stop something. His fingers hovered near the wood, but didn't touch it. He didn't need to. He could see the pattern. Pressure forward, resistance, movement backward. Shadow hadn't been taken quietly. Jack straightened slowly. The room behind him remained still. Too still. He turned his head just slightly, listening again. Nothing. No breath. No movement. No life. The kind of quiet that didn't come from absence. The kind that came after something had been removed. Jack walked back into the main room. Each step measured. Each breath controlled. His gaze passed over the place again, slower this time. Not looking for what was there, looking for what had been changed. The counters were wiped, cleaner than usual. No scattered dog hair, no paw prints near the back entrance. Someone had been careful, too careful. Jack moved to the table near the window. His hand rested on the edge, fingers pressing down just enough to feel the grain. He stayed like that for a moment. Still. Then his eyes shifted toward the empty space near the door. That was where Shadow usually waited, not directly in front, slightly off to the side, where he could see both the entrance and the window. Good position. Jack had taught him that. Years ago. A different place. A different life. Heat. Dust. The distant crack of something not meant for civilians. Shadow had learned quickly, faster than most men Jack had worked with. Stay. Watch. Wait. Shadow had never broken that. Not once. Jack's throat moved, but no sound came out. He didn't call the dog's name. Didn't need to. This wasn't the kind of silence that answered. He stepped back toward the door, eyes still on the room. Everything looked right. That was the problem. Jack opened the front door again and stepped out onto the porch. The air felt colder now, sharper against his skin. He turned slowly, scanning the clearing beyond the cabin. No tracks visible from here. The ground was too dry, too packed. Pine needles scattered over everything, but his eyes lingered on the tree line. Someone had come here. Someone who knew how to leave without noise. Someone who understood what not to disturb. Jack's gaze shifted back to the door behind him, then to the window, then to the truck. The pieces were starting to settle into place. Not all of them. Not yet. But enough. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Looked at it. Didn't unlock it. Didn't dial. After a few seconds, he slid it back into his pocket. No report. No call. No waiting. Jack stepped off the porch and moved toward the edge of the clearing, boots pressing quietly into the ground. He stopped where the dirt softened slightly under the trees. Knelt. One hand hovered just above the surface. There. Faint compression. Disturbed layer beneath the needles. Not obvious. But not natural either. Weight had been here. Heavy. He shifted his angle, eyes narrowing slightly. There were no clean prints. Whoever had come through had known better. But Shadow. Jack's gaze moved a few inches to the right. A single indentation, deeper than the rest. Paw. Not running. Not struggling. Planted. Held. Jack exhaled slowly. His shoulders settled. The map in his head sharpened. Timeline adjusted. Entry. Resistance. Removal. He stood again, turning his head slightly toward the road that wound down through the trees. Somewhere out there, a truck had passed. Somewhere out there, a dog had been taken. Not lost. Not wandering. Taken. Jack Mercer looked back at the cabin one last time. The clean windows. The still doorway. The quiet that didn't belong. Then he turned toward the road. And this time he moved without hesitation. And Jack already knew what came next. He had been taken. And Jack already knew what came next. The road out of the mountains curved tight along the ridge, gravel shifting under the truck tires as Jack drove without turning on the radio. He kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting near his thigh, fingers loose but ready, like he was waiting for something to break the silence. It always did. Just not when you expected it. The cabin shrank in the rearview mirror until it disappeared behind the trees. Jack didn't look back again. He drove straight into town. The place was small, barely a cluster of buildings tucked between the mountain roads and a stretch of aging pine. A gas station, a diner, a hardware store that hadn't changed in 20 years. People here noticed things, but they didn't ask questions unless they had to. When Jack pulled into the gravel lot beside the diner and cut the engine, for a second, the quiet came back. That same unnatural quiet from the cabin. He stepped out. The bell above the diner door gave a soft, metallic ring as he walked in. Warm air hit him, carrying the smell of burnt coffee and fried eggs. A few heads turned, then turned back. Routine, predictable, safe. Jack moved to the counter. "Mornin'," the waitress said without looking up. Late 50s, gray hair pulled tight, movements efficient. "Coffee?" Jack nodded once. She poured without asking anything else. He didn't drink it right away, just stood there, hands resting on the counter, eyes fixed on the reflection in the glass behind the coffee machine. People moving. No threats. No exits blocked. Still clear. Something wrong out your way?" She asked after a moment, not turning, just listening. Jack didn't answer immediately. "Dog's gone," he said finally. That got her attention. She glanced over her shoulder. "The shepherd?" Jack nodded. "Haven't seen him this morning," she said. "He usually sits by your truck when you're in town." He knew that. Shadow didn't wander, didn't roam. He moved with purpose or not at all. Jack picked up the coffee, took a small sip, then set it down again. "Anyone come through early?" he asked. The waitress shrugged. "Couple trucks before sunrise, logging route, nothing unusual." Jack's eyes narrowed slightly. "Which direction?" She pointed with her chin. "North Road, same as always." North. Jack filed it away. He left a bill on the counter and walked out without finishing the coffee. Well, the truck engine started on the first turn. He pulled back onto the road, heading toward the sheriff's office at the edge of town. It was a small building. Brick faded by weather, flag hanging still in the morning air. Jack stepped inside. Sheriff Logan Reed stood behind a desk cluttered with papers and a radio that crackled every few minutes with half-finished conversations. He looked up as Jack entered. "Mercer." Jack didn't waste time. "Dog's gone." Reed leaned back slightly. "You checked the usual spots?" Jack didn't answer. Reed studied his face for a second longer than necessary. "Taken?" he asked. Jack nodded once. Reed exhaled slowly. "You got proof?" Jack turned his head slightly, as if replaying something. "Door scratches," he said. "Back exit. Controlled marks. Not panic. Resistance." Reed frowned. "Oh, could be anything. Animal?" "Not animal," Jack cut in quietly. The room went still for a moment. Reed shifted his weight. "All right. Say you're right. You want me to put out a report?" Jack shook his head. "No record," he said. "No chip logged, no shelter intake." Reed nodded slowly. "That makes it harder." Jack's gaze stayed steady. "No," he said. "That makes it cleaner." Reed let out a short breath, somewhere between frustration and understanding. "You think someone came for him?" he asked. Jack didn't answer right away. Instead, something flickered behind his eyes. A hallway. Dim light. A shadow moving where it shouldn't. A low growl from deep in Shadow's chest. The memory hit sharp and fast, like a round cracking past too close. Jack blinked once. "Yeah," he said. Reed tapped a pen against the desk. "Anyone got a reason?" Jack turned his head slightly toward the window, looking out at the empty lot. "Megan," The name didn't come out loud. Not yet. He knew something, Jack said instead. Reed frowned. A dog? Jack looked back at him. Shadow doesn't react without cause, he said. He marks behavior, patterns. Reed didn't argue with that. Everyone in town had seen the dog. Calm, focused, not the kind that snapped without warning. All right, Reed said. You want me to keep an eye out? Jack nodded once. That's all I need. Reed studied him again. You're not just going to let this go. It wasn't a question. Jack didn't answer. He turned and walked out. The sunlight hit harder now, bouncing off the truck hood in sharp flashes. For a second, it felt like something else. Something brighter, louder. A blast. Dust, and voices shouting over radio static. Jack's hand tightened on the door handle before he even realized it. Then it was gone. Just sunlight. Just the truck. He got in and shut the door. The cab felt smaller than before. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out an old photograph. Edges worn, colors faded slightly from time. Him, kneeling beside Shadow. The dog sat tall, ears forward, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the camera. Alert, always alert. Jack stared at the image for a long moment. Then something shifted. Not in the photo, in his memory. A different angle. A different day. Shadow standing in the hallway, body rigid. Low growl. Facing the guest room. Jack had been on a video call then, half paying attention. Megan laughing in the background, brushing it off. He's just being dramatic, she had said. But Jack's jaw tightened now. Another memory surfaced. Shadow blocking the staircase one night, refusing to move, watching the dark like it was alive. Jack had stepped over him, ignored it. The realization came slow, like something heavy settling into place. Shadow hadn't been reacting. He had been warning. Jack folded the photograph and set it back in the compartment. Then he started the engine again. This time, he didn't head north. He turned toward the cabin, toward Megan. The drive back felt shorter. The trees seemed closer now, the shadows deeper between them. Every curve in the road held a little more weight than before. Jack pulled up to the cabin and cut the engine. The door was open. That wasn't how he left it. He stepped out slowly. The air had changed. Not colder, tighter. Jack moved toward the porch, his boots silent on the wood. His hand brushed the doorframe lightly as he stepped inside. Megan stood in the kitchen, back turned. She didn't flinch when he entered. You forgot something? She asked without looking over. Jack didn't answer right away. He closed the door behind him. Where is he? He said. Her shoulders stiffened just slightly. I told you, she replied. He had to go. Jack took a step forward. Where? She turned then, calm, controlled, too controlled. I had him taken to a place up north, she said. A facility. They deal with aggressive dogs. Jack's eyes didn't move. Who took him? Megan hesitated. Just for a second. That was enough. A guy Travis knows, she said. He handles things like that. Jack's gaze sharpened. Travis. The name sat wrong, like a detail that didn't belong in the story, but had been forced in anyway. Megan crossed her arms. Look, Jack, he was getting dangerous. He snapped at Travis. No, Jack said quietly. She stopped. He didn't snap, Jack continued. He warned. Megan's expression tightened. You weren't here. Jack took another step closer. I saw the scratches on the door, he said. He tried to stop it. Silence. Megan looked away first. That told him everything. Jack's eyes shifted slightly, taking in the room again. Clean. Too clean. And then he saw it. A jacket slung over the back of a chair. Not his. Larger. Heavier. Still carrying the faint smell of cologne that didn't belong in this place. Jack's gaze returned to Megan. This time something behind it had changed. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. Oh, you didn't take him to a facility, he said. Megan didn't answer. Jack nodded slowly. He saw it, he said. Her eyes flicked up. He saw him, Jack continued. That's why you got rid of him. The silence stretched, long enough to confirm it. Megan exhaled sharply. You're twisting this. Jack didn't move. Where? He said again. Her voice dropped. North Road, she said. That's all I know. Jack held her gaze for a few seconds longer. Then he turned. No shouting, no breaking things, just movement. He walked to the door and stepped outside. The air felt different now, clearer, simpler. The road stretched ahead, cutting through the trees toward the mountains beyond. Jack Mercer stood there for a moment, looking at it. Then he went to the truck, opened the door, and got in. This time, when he started the engine, he didn't hesitate, because now he knew. Shadow hadn't just been taken. He had been thrown away. And Jack was going to follow the road that man took. Until it ended. The truck cut through the northern road as the mountains closed in on both sides, tall pines pressing tight against the sky like silent witnesses. Gravel snapped under the tires, echoing longer than it should have. Jack didn't speed. Speed made noise. Noise erased details. He drove like he had learned to move in another place years ago, slow enough to notice, fast enough to stay ahead of doubt. The sun climbed higher, but the light didn't warm anything. Not the road, not the air, not the steady pressure building behind his ribs. North Road. That was all Megan had given him. It wasn't much, but it was enough. As Jack's eyes tracked everything. Tire marks layered over older ones, fresh cuts in the dirt, the angle of branches bent where something larger had pushed through. Nothing stood out. Whoever drove this route knew how to pass through without leaving anything worth following. Jack exhaled once, slow, then kept going. By noon, the road widened into a junction where an old sign leaned crooked against a post. County line. Beyond that, the land flattened into long stretches of open terrain broken by scattered tree lines and low hills. He pulled over. Engine off. Silence again. Not the same silence as the cabin. This one was honest. Wind moved through dry grass in low waves. Somewhere far off, a truck passed. Faint, distant, not part of this place. Jack stepped out and walked a few yards off the road, and he crouched near a patch of dirt where the surface had softened from an old rain. There were tracks, too many, but he didn't need clean prints. He read patterns, weight distribution, turn angles. The way a tire cut deeper on one side meant a load had shifted. He moved along the edge slowly, then stopped. There, a disturbance just off the main track. Not large, not obvious, but wrong. Jack lowered himself, one knee pressing into the dirt. His fingers hovered above the ground again, tracing the shape without touching. A scuff. Longer than a step, shorter than a fall. Dragged. Something had been pushed out of a vehicle here. His jaw tightened. Jack's eyes shifted slightly to the side. Another mark. A deeper imprint. Paw. Front leg. Braced. Not running. Not panicked. Planted. Holding ground. Jack's breath slowed. His shadow had hit the ground here. Not by choice, but not broken. He stood slowly and looked out across the open land. Nothing moved. No fences nearby. No buildings. No sign of shelter. Just distance. Jack turned back toward the truck. This wasn't a place you stayed. This was a place you left someone. The engine started again. He drove farther north. He checked the first town past the county line. Small. Quiet. The kind of place where strangers stood out without trying. Jack went straight to the animal shelter. The woman at the desk looked up as he entered. Mid-40s. Tired eyes. Used to people asking the same questions. "Can I help you?" she said. Jack placed the photograph on the counter. "Dog," he said. "German Shepherd. About 5 years old." She picked up the photo and studied it for a second longer than most people did. Beautiful animal, she said. He is, Jack replied. She glanced at her computer, typing quickly. No intake under that description, she said after a moment. Not recently. Jack didn't move. Check older records, he said. She hesitated, then nodded, scrolling through entries. Minutes passed. Only the sound of keys and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Finally, she shook her head. Nothing, she said. No match. No stray report either. Jack took the photo back. What about private drop-offs? He asked. She frowned. We log everything. It's policy. Jack held her gaze. She didn't look away. That told him she believed what she was saying. He nodded once. Thank you. Outside, the sunlight felt harsher. Jack stood beside the truck for a moment, his eyes fixed on nothing in particular. No intake, no report, no trace. He moved on. Veterinary clinic. Same result. Feed store. Old man behind the counter squinted at the photo. Maybe saw something like that, he said slowly. Big shepherd. Didn't stick around. Came through fast. When? Jack asked. Couple weeks back. Maybe more. Direction? The man pointed north. Always north. Jack thanked him and left. By late afternoon, he had checked 3 towns. Same answers. Same blank spaces. No official record. No system trail. That meant one thing. Shadow had never been processed. Never captured. Never contained. Jack sat in the truck as the light began to fade. The sky stretched wide above him, turning from pale blue to a deeper, colder shade. He reached into the passenger seat and pulled out a small notebook, many blank pages. He opened to the first one. For a moment, he just looked at it. Then he took a pen from the console and began to write. Date, time, location. Observed track disturbance, possible drop point, direction of travel, northbound. No shelter intake within 50-mile radius. He wrote in clean block letters. No wasted motion. No emotion in the lines. Just facts. That was how you built something that lasted. The pen paused. Jack's eyes lifted slightly, staring out through the windshield. The wind picked up, brushing across the truck in a low, steady sound. For a split second, it shifted. Rotors. Heavy. Close. Jack's hand tightened on the pen. His breathing changed. Shorter. Controlled. His head turned sharply toward the sound that wasn't there. Nothing. Just wind. He blinked once. The truck interior came back into focus. The notebook. The road. He exhaled slowly and forced his grip to loosen. The pen lowered again. He added one more line. No official record. He closed the notebook. Set it on the seat beside him. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the road ahead. Jack leaned back slightly, eyes still open. He didn't feel tired. He hadn't slept the night before. Wouldn't sleep tonight either. Sleep came when things were safe. Nothing about this was safe. He reached under the seat and pulled out an old duffel bag. Inside, clothes, gear, things he hadn't touched in years but never threw away. At the bottom, wrapped in cloth, was a knife. Same one he had carried overseas. Not for fighting, for control. He unwrapped it slowly, checking the edge with his thumb. Still sharp, still steady. He set it within reach, then leaned forward again, hands resting on the wheel. The road stretched out in front of him. Dark now, endless. Jack Mercer stared at it without blinking. He wasn't going back. Not to the cabin. Not to the life he had left behind that morning. This was the line now. Follow it. Track it. Finish it. No report. No backup. No waiting. Just movement. And somewhere out there, a dog that had hit the ground and chosen not to run. Jack turned the key again. The engine came to life, and the truck rolled forward into the dark. Headlights carved a narrow path through the trees, cutting the world into 2 parts, what could be seen, and everything else waiting just beyond it. Jack didn't drive fast. He let the road speak first. Gravel shifted under the tires in uneven patterns. The suspension picked up every dip, every change in grade. His hands stayed steady on the wheel, but his eyes never stopped moving. Left shoulder, tree line tight. Right side, open ground, slight drop. No recent turnoffs. No fresh cuts in the terrain. Nothing obvious. That was the problem. Whoever had driven Shadow out here hadn't panicked. No rushed exit. No sloppy tracks. No mistakes left behind. Jack had seen that before. Not in towns like this. In places where people didn't expect to come back. The road bent north again, then narrowed, becoming less a road and more a suggestion. Tire tracks faded. The ground hardened. Jack slowed further. The truck rolled forward like it was feeling its way through the dark. He reached over and turned off the headlights. The world vanished. For a moment, there was nothing but black. And then slowly, shapes began to return. The outline of trees against the sky. The faint reflection of starlight across the land. Jack let the truck idle. Listened. No engines. No movement. No human noise. He stepped out. The cold hit harder now, settling into his chest, sharpening everything. Jack stood still, letting his eyes adjust. Then he moved off the road. Not following tracks, following logic. If a man wanted to dump a dog without being followed, he wouldn't do it close to the road. Too visible, too easy to trace. He'd move far enough to feel safe, but not far enough to waste time. Jack paced it out. 10 yards, 20, 30. He stopped. The ground here had changed, softer, more forgiving. His eyes dropped. There it was again. Not a clean track, a memory of one. Found a front paw print pressed deep enough to hold shape even after time had tried to erase it. Jack crouched. The angle was wrong for running. Weight forward, body lowered, watching. He shifted slightly to the side. Another mark. Back leg. Set wider. Balanced. Shadow hadn't bolted. He had assessed. Jack exhaled slowly. Good, he said under his breath. The word came out rough. Not praise. Recognition. He stood and moved forward, scanning the ground ahead. The pattern repeated. Faint impressions, broken lines, small disturbances in the dirt where something had passed with purpose, not panic. Jack followed. Step by step, slow enough to not lose it, fast enough to stay with it. The trail didn't lead straight. It curved, adjusted. Shadow had changed direction more than once, testing, correcting. When Jack's mind tracked alongside him, building the same path. Not random, not lost, moving with intention. He stopped again near a cluster of low brush. Something had been disturbed here more heavily. Jack lowered himself carefully, brushing aside a thin layer of dirt. There. A small smear, dark against the lighter ground. He didn't touch it. Didn't need to. Blood. Old. Not fresh. But not ancient either. Jack's jaw tightened. His eyes moved outward, scanning the surrounding area. No signs of a struggle. No scattered ground. No chaotic movement. Just that one mark. A hit. A stumble. Then movement continued. Shadow had been injured, but he hadn't stayed down. Jack stood slowly. His shoulders settled into something heavier now. Not doubt, not fear. Something closer to certainty. He turned his head, looking farther into the open land beyond the trees. The terrain shifted again out there. Rolling ground, broken by shallow dips and narrow ridges. Harder to track, easier to disappear. That's where Shadow had gone. Jack walked back to the truck. The headlights came on again, washing the darkness away. He didn't linger, didn't question the direction. He got in, turned the wheel, and followed the line that only he could see. Hours passed. The road changed beneath him. Gravel to dirt, dirt to packed earth, then back again. Small towns came and went like shadows. Jack didn't stop unless he had to. When he did, it was quick. A gas station just past midnight. The clerk barely looked up. "Pump 3, Jack said. The man nodded, eyes already back on his phone. Jack filled the tank, then leaned against the truck for a moment, scanning the empty lot. A stray dog barked somewhere in the distance, sharp, short, then silence. Jack's head turned slightly, listening. But it wasn't Shadow. Not close. Not right. He got back in the truck and kept moving. By early morning, the sky had begun to lighten again, a pale gray stretching across the horizon. Jack pulled off near a feed store just opening for the day. An older man stood outside, unlocking the door. Jack stepped out and walked over. "Morning," the man said, eyeing him briefly. Jack nodded once and handed him the photograph. "Seen this dog?" The man squinted, holding the picture up to the light. "Big shepherd," he muttered. "Yeah, maybe." Jack waited. "Couple days back," the man continued. "Out near the north pasture. Didn't come close, just stood there." "Didn't run?" Jack asked. No, the man shook his head. "No, just watched." Jack's eyes narrowed slightly. "Which way did he go?" The man pointed toward a stretch of land beyond the store. "North again, kept to the edges. Smart animal." Jack took the photo back. "Yeah," he said quietly. "He is." He turned without another word. Back in the truck, he opened the notebook again. New entry. Feed store. Visual confirmation. Behavior. Stationary observation. Direction. North. He underlined the last word once. North. Always north. Jack closed the notebook and rested his hands on the wheel. The exhaustion was there now. Not in his body, in the edges of his vision. The slight delay between thought and movement. He hadn't slept. Didn't plan to. He adjusted his grip slightly, then started the engine again. The truck rolled forward into the pale morning light, and somewhere ahead, a dog with an injured leg had chosen not to hide, not to beg, not to break, just to move. Jack followed, not because he had hope, but because the trail was still there, and as long as it existed, he wasn't done. Winter didn't arrive all at once. It crept in. First through the wind, colder, sharper, slipping under the seams of the truck doors at night. Then through the sky, turning pale earlier each evening, holding the sun back longer each morning. Jack noticed it the way he noticed everything, without reacting, just adjusting. He traded open roads for tighter routes, stopped cutting across exposed ground, parked facing outward, always ready to move without turning around. The notebook grew heavier, pages filled with dates, towns, and fragments of conversations. Big shepherd near the ridge. Dog seen at dusk. Didn't approach. Tracks leading north, then gone. Always the same pattern. Appear, observe, move on. Never stay. Jack followed every lead. Some took him hours off course. Some took him days. Most led nowhere. By the time the first real snow hit, he was 2 states away from Idaho. Wyoming. The land had changed. Wide, open stretches broken by low hills and thin tree lines that offered no real cover. The kind of place where winter didn't just settle. It owned everything. Jack pulled the truck over near an abandoned fence line as the storm thickened. Snow fell in hard, slanted sheets, driven by a wind that didn't slow down for anything. He shut off the engine. The silence came back. But this time it wasn't empty. It pressed in when Jack stepped out into it. The cold hit like a physical force, tightening his chest, sharpening his breath. He moved along the fence, eyes low, scanning the ground. Fresh snow erased everything, except what pushed through it. Jack crouched near a break in the wire. There. A line of disturbance. Subtle, but wrong. The snow dipped slightly in a pattern that didn't match the wind. He followed it. Step by step. The trail wasn't clean. The storm was already trying to bury it. But it was there. Faint impressions. 4 points. Spacing uneven. Jack's jaw tightened. Shadow's gait had changed. one leg dragging slightly behind the others. Injury. Still moving. Jack pushed forward into the storm. Visibility dropped fast. 10 yards, maybe less. The world narrowed to white and shadow. The wind shifted suddenly, and for a split second, it wasn't wind anymore. Rotor blades. Loud. Too close. Jack's body reacted before his mind caught up. He dropped low, one hand already reaching for the knife, eyes scanning for cover that wasn't there. Snow, just snow. The sound snapped back into nothing. Jack stayed still for a moment longer, breathing controlled, counting without thinking. 1, 2, 3. The storm settled again. Just wind. Just cold. He stood slowly, forcing his grip to loosen. The knife stayed in his hand for another second before he slid it back into the sheath. Then he moved again. The trail continued, cutting across the open land toward a line of trees barely visible through the storm. Jack followed. He didn't rush, didn't panic. The trail would disappear if he lost it. Oh, and if he lost it, there was nothing left. By the time he reached the trees, the snow had deepened. Each step sank harder. The trail faded, then vanished. Jack stopped. The wind howled through the branches, shaking loose fresh snow that fell in thick clumps around him. He turned slowly, scanning the ground. Nothing. The storm had taken it, just like that. Jack stood there longer than he should have, not moving, not searching. Just standing in the place where the trail had ended. Then his eyes shifted. To the right, near the base of a tree. A small shape broke the pattern of white. Jack stepped closer. Knelt. It was a clump of fir. Dark. Matted slightly. Caught on a broken branch low to the ground. Jack reached out this time. Carefully. His fingers closed around it. Still soft. Still real. He didn't speak. Or didn't move. The wind pushed harder, biting through his jacket, through his skin, through everything that wasn't locked down tight. Jack sat back on his heels, the fur still in his hand. For a moment, the world tilted. Not physically. Inside. A different place. Heat. Dust. The crack of something incoming before the sound arrived. Men shouting. The ground jumping under impact. Jack's head snapped up, eyes scanning the trees like they could hide something more than snow. Nothing. Just branches. Just wind. Just winter. He blinked once, then again. The image cleared. The trees returned. The cold came back. He looked down at the fur in his hand. Shadow had been here. In this storm. In this cold. Injury. No shelter. No help. Jack's fingers tightened slightly. Not enough to crush it. Just enough to feel it. Oh, he stood slowly. The trail was gone. The storm had made sure of that. There was no direction now, no path, no map. Just empty white stretching in every direction. Jack turned in a slow circle. Nothing. The land had swallowed everything. He walked back to the truck without looking behind him. Each step heavier. Not from the snow, from something else. The truck door creaked as he opened it. The cab felt smaller now, colder. Jack sat inside, closing the door behind him. The wind hit the metal, rattling it in sharp bursts. He placed the clump of fur on the dashboard. It didn't belong there, but he left it. A marker, a fact. He reached for the notebook again. Hands steady, always steady. New entry. Location. Wyoming Ridge Line. Condition. Heavy snow, visibility near zero. Evidence. Fur sample. Possible injury. A trail lost. The pen paused. Jack stared at the page. Then he added one more line. Survival probability. Decreasing. He closed the notebook. Set it down. His eyes moved back to the fur on the dashboard. Snow hit the windshield in thick bursts, building fast. Jack leaned back slightly in the seat. For the first time since this started, He didn't reach for the keys right away. The thought came in quiet. Not loud, not dramatic, just there. He might already be too late. Jack's jaw tightened. His eyes stayed on the windshield. The storm outside swallowed the world completely. No road, no direction, no movement. Just white. And silence. The kind that ended things. Jack's hand moved slowly. Not to the keys, to the dashboard. He picked up the clump of fur again, held it, the weight of it barely anything. Oh, but enough. He looked at it for a long moment, then set it back down. His hand shifted, this time to the ignition. The engine roared back to life. The headlights cut through the storm again, barely reaching beyond the hood. Jack gripped the wheel, harder now, not out of fear, out of decision. The trail was gone, but Shadow wasn't. Not yet. Jack leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing against the white ahead. Then he drove straight into it. Because if something had survived this, it wasn't done either. The storm broke sometime before dawn, not gently. It tore itself apart. Wind died first, like a switch flipped somewhere above the clouds. Then the snow softened, slowed, until it drifted down in quiet, loose flakes that didn't fight the ground anymore. Jack had pulled the truck off the road hours before that, but he didn't remember doing it. Just the moment after. Engine idling. Headlights dimmed against a wall of white. His hands still on the wheel. Eyes open. No sleep. Not even close. When the silence returned, it wasn't the same kind. This one had space in it. Jack stepped out. The air felt different, colder, but cleaner. The kind of cold that didn't push back, just waited. The land stretched wide again, reshaped by the storm. Every line erased, every path buried. Jack stood there for a moment, looking out over it. Then he turned back to the truck, reached in, and grabbed the notebook. He flipped to the last entry. Trail lost. Survival probability decreasing. Jack stared at the words, then closed the notebook. He didn't cross them out, didn't add to them, just put it back on the seat. He moved on. By midday, the road had cleared enough for travel. Jack followed it north. The landscape shifted slowly again. Open plains gave way to scattered farmsteads. Fences cut across the snow in long, uneven lines. Smoke rose from distant chimneys, thin and steady against the sky. Life, simple, contained. Jack pulled into the first farm he saw with movement. A man stood near a barn, repairing something along the fence line. Mid-60s, heavy coat, hands that had seen more winters than comfort. Jack stepped out of the truck and approached. The man looked up, eyes narrowing slightly. "You lost?" he called out. Jack shook his head once and held up the photograph. "Looking for a dog." The man wiped his hands on his coat and stepped closer. He took the photo, studied it. Longer than most. "Yeah," he said finally. Jack didn't move. "Oh, when?" he asked. The man glanced out toward the open field. 3 nights ago," he said. "Storm was just starting to roll in." Jack's chest tightened slightly. "Where?" he asked. The man pointed past the barn. "Out there, near the far fence. Heard the livestock going restless. Thought it was coyotes." Jack waited. The man shook his head slowly. "Wasn't coyotes," he said. Jack's eyes narrowed. "What was it?" The man handed the photo back. "That dog," he said. "Your dog." Jack's grip tightened slightly on the edge of the photograph. "What did he do?" he asked. The man let out a short breath, like he was still trying to place it in his own head. "He didn't chase anything," he said. "Didn't bark much either. Just moved straight through the field. Quiet. Controlled." Jack listened. "Jack. He cut off a wolf before it got close to the fence," the man continued. "Didn't go for the kill, just drove it off." Jack's eyes shifted slightly. Calculated. Efficient. That was Shadow. "He didn't stay," the man added. "Didn't come near the house. Didn't take food when I put some out. Jack looked at him. You tried to feed him? The man nodded. Left some scraps by the barn. Figured he'd need it in that weather. Jack said nothing. He didn't touch it, the man said. Just stood there a while, watching. Then he moved on. Jack turned his head slightly toward the open land beyond the fence. Still moving. Even after injury. Even after the storm. Which direction? Jack asked. The man pointed again. North, he said. Same as you're heading. Jack nodded once. He turned back toward the truck. Hey, the man called after him. Jack paused. That dog of yours, the man said, voice quieter now. He's not lost. Jack looked back at him. The man shook his head slowly. Lost dogs don't move like that, he said. They circle, they panic, they come to people. Jack held his gaze. That one, the man continued. He was going somewhere. Silence settled between them. Then Jack nodded once. Yeah, he said. He got back into the truck. The engine started, but he didn't move right away. His eyes stayed on the field outside. He could see it now. Shadow moving through the snow. Low, controlled, cutting angles, not wasting energy, not reacting, operating. Jack's hand tightened slightly on the wheel, not hope, something sharper, recognition. He shifted his gaze to the passenger seat as the clump of fur still rested on the dashboard. Unchanged. Real. Jack reached for the notebook again, opened it. New entry. Farmstead. Livestock incident. Behavior. Controlled engagement. Defensive only. No feeding response. Direction. North. He paused, then added, not lost. He closed the notebook and set it down. The truck rolled forward again. The road stretched ahead, cutting through the snow-covered land like a thin, uncertain line. Jack followed it. Not faster, not slower, just steady. The hours passed. The sky shifted. Light faded again. Jack didn't stop, didn't question, didn't turn around. Somewhere out there, a dog had chosen not to stay, not to take what was offered, not to settle. He kept moving. Jack's eyes narrowed slightly as the road dipped into a lower stretch of land, and trees closing in again on both sides. The light thinned, shadows deepened. For a moment, the wind picked up again, a low, rolling sound through the branches. It shifted, just slightly. Rotor blades. Jack's grip tightened. His head turned sharply. Scanning. Nothing. The sound dropped back into the wind. Gone. His breathing slowed again. Controlled. He didn't stop the truck. Didn't pull over. He kept moving. Because the sound didn't matter. The storm didn't matter. The distance didn't matter. Only one thing did. Shadow was still out there. Still moving. Still choosing direction. Jack followed the road deeper into the dark. And for the first time since the trail had disappeared, the emptiness felt different. Not smaller, but not endless anymore. Because somewhere ahead, the path wasn't gone, and it had just moved beyond where most people would stop looking. Jack didn't stop. He drove on. Days turned into weeks before he noticed it. Not because time moved fast, because it stopped meaning anything. The road replaced it. Miles instead of hours. Towns instead of dates. Conversations instead of sleep. Jack measured everything in distance now. Distance covered. Distance remaining. Distance between where Shadow had been and where he might be next. The first winter passed like that. In pieces. Truck stops where the coffee tasted burned and the lights stayed on too long. Small motels where the heat clicked all night and the walls held other people's silence. Parking lots where Jack slept sitting up, engine off, one hand resting near the knife without realizing it. He didn't dream. He dropped. Then came back up again. Always alert. Always listening. Spring didn't feel like relief, just a change in terrain. Snow melted into mud. Roads softened. Tracks lasted longer, but so did mistakes. Jack adjusted. He slowed down in the mornings. Let the ground tell him more. Watched for broken lines where movement didn't belong. Most days there was nothing, just land, and the memory of something that had already passed through it. The sightings began to blur. A trucker outside Billings swore he saw a large shepherd running along the highway shoulder, keeping pace without crossing. A woman at a gas station in Colorado said a dog had stood near the pumps at dawn, watching every vehicle like it was waiting for the wrong one. A hunter in Montana described a shadow moving through the trees, not chasing, not hiding, just present. And each story carried the same shape, not lost, not desperate, moving. Jack wrote them all down, every detail, every direction. The notebook thickened, pages filled with lines that didn't connect, but didn't break either. He followed them anyway. The second year came quieter, not outside, inside. Jack stopped asking people the same way, stopped explaining. He would place the photograph on a counter, wait, watch the reaction. Most people glanced, shook their heads, handed it back. Some looked longer. Those were the ones that mattered. He learned to read that pause, that moment when recognition fought with uncertainty. That's where truth lived. He stopped staying in one place too long, stayed ahead of routine, stayed ahead of doubt. Work came when he needed it. Loading supplies, fixing fences, to night shifts watching empty buildings where nothing ever happened. He didn't mind the work. It gave him structure, a reason to stand still without stopping. The truck became everything else. Home, storage, memory. The passenger seat stayed empty, always. The red rubber ball sat there instead, faded now. Small cracks along the surface where teeth had pressed into it over and over again. Jack never moved it, not even when space ran out. That seat wasn't for anything else. By the third year, people started to remember him, not by name, by presence. The man in camo who asked about the dog. Always the same photo, always the same question. Some gave answers just to be kind. Jack could tell. He didn't write those down. Others hesitated, looked past him before speaking. Those ones? He followed. A mechanic in Utah told him about a shepherd that had walked into a repair yard at night, circled twice, then left without a sound. A ranch hand in Idaho said a dog had appeared near the ridge, stayed just long enough to watch the herd settle, then disappeared before sunrise. A delivery driver mentioned a shadow moving between trucks at a rest stop, keeping distance but never losing sight of the road. Always the same pattern. Observe, adjust, move. Jack stopped thinking of shadow as lost. That word didn't fit anymore. Lost meant confusion. This wasn't confusion. This was direction without explanation. The fourth year wore him down. Not physically. That part held. Routine took care of that. It was something else. The space between sightings grew longer. Weeks turned into months without anything solid. Just fragments. Of stories that almost matched. Details that almost aligned. Jack kept moving anyway. But something changed. He didn't rush anymore. Didn't chase every lead with the same urgency. He let them come to him. Filtered them. Reduced noise. Refined the pattern. Like mapping a target from incomplete data. He had done that before. Different context. Same method. The fifth winter came colder than the first. Or maybe it just felt that way. Jack pulled into a gas station somewhere along the edge of Oregon. He didn't check the sign. Didn't need to. The land told him where he was. Mountains again. Different from Idaho. Wider. Older. He stepped out of the truck and stretched his back slightly. The cold settled in fast. The kind that didn't bite. Just stayed. Inside, the station was quiet. But a young clerk stood behind the counter, flipping through something on his phone. Jack placed the photograph down. "Seen this dog?" he asked. The clerk barely glanced at it, then looked again. Slower. His brow tightened slightly. "Maybe," he said. Jack didn't move. When? He asked. The clerk scratched the back of his neck. Early mornings, he said. Near the lake road. Big dog. Doesn't come close. Jack's chest shifted slightly. How long? Couple weeks, the clerk said. Not every day, just sometimes. Jack's eyes narrowed. Alone? The clerk hesitated. Mostly, he said. Jack caught that. Mostly. The clerk shrugged. Thought I saw someone once, far back in the trees. Could have been nothing. Jack took the photograph back. Which road? He asked. The clerk pointed. North side of town. It leads out toward the mountains. North. Always north. Jack nodded once and turned. Back in the truck, he didn't start the engine right away. His eyes stayed on the road ahead. 5 years. 5 winters. 5 years of movement without a rival. But something felt different now. Not closer. Not clearer. Just tighter. Like the space between pieces had narrowed. Jack reached for the notebook again. New entry. Oregon. Gas station sighting. Early morning presence. Pattern consistent. Possible secondary contact. Unconfirmed. He paused. Then wrote one more line. Movement is intentional. He closed the notebook and set it down. The red ball rested beside it. Still. Unchanged. Jack's hand hovered over it for a moment, then dropped back to the wheel. He started the engine. The truck rolled forward slowly, then merging onto the narrow road that led out of town. The mountains rose ahead, darker now against the fading light. The road curved upward, into them. Jack followed, because after 5 years, the pattern hadn't broken. It had led somewhere. And for the first time, he wasn't just following it. He was about to step into it. The road narrowed as it climbed, not the kind of road meant for traffic, the kind meant for people who already knew where they were going. Jack kept the truck steady, easing through the curves as the mountains closed in tighter around him. Pines rose taller here, older. The light filtered through them in long, uneven beams that never fully reached the ground. He didn't rush. Didn't need to. Something about this place changed the rhythm. The town appeared without warning. No sign. No gradual build. Just a break in the trees. And suddenly there it was. A handful of buildings gathered around a single main road. A diner, a general store, a gas pump that looked older than the road itself. Smoke rising from chimneys in thin, steady lines. It should have felt like every other place he had passed through. It didn't. Jack slowed the truck. Not because he had to, because something in him told him to. He pulled to the side of the road and cut the engine. Silence settled. Not empty, not heavy. Different. Jack stepped out. The air carried a faint smell of wood smoke and something baking somewhere nearby. A dog barked in the distance, short, casual, nothing like Shadow. He stood still for a moment, listening, not for sound, for absence. Then he moved. The general store door gave a soft chime as he entered. Inside, the space was small but full, shelves stacked with supplies, tools, things people actually used. Behind the counter stood a man in his 60s, broad shoulders, gray beard, eyes sharp despite the years. He looked up, took in Jack's posture first, then the way he moved, then the photograph in his hand. "You're not passing through," the man said. Jack set the photo on the counter. "No," he said. "I'm not." The man picked it up, studied it, longer than most. "That's him," he said quietly. Jack didn't react. "When?" he asked. "Couple mornings," the man replied. "Near the lake trail, early, before most folks are up." Jack's chest tightened just slightly. "Alone?" he asked. The man hesitated. "Hard to say," he said. "He moves like he doesn't want to be seen." Jack held his gaze. "But," he pressed. The man shifted his weight. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "it feels like he's not the only one out there." Jack took the photograph back. "Lake trail," he repeated. The man nodded. "North side of town. Can't miss it. Jack turned and left without another word. Outside, the light had shifted again. Lower now. Longer shadows stretching across the road. He didn't go back to the truck. Not yet. Instead, he walked, following the direction the man had given him. The trail started where the road ended. A narrow path cutting through the trees, barely marked, just worn enough to show it was used, but not often. Jack paused at the edge. His eyes moved over the ground. Tracks. Old. Mixed. Nothing clean. But something was there. He stepped onto the trail, moved slowly, each foot placed with intention. The forest swallowed sound quickly. The further he went, the quieter it became until even his own movement seemed distant. The lake appeared ahead through the trees. Wide. Still. The surface caught the last light of the day, turning it into something almost reflective, almost unreal. Jack stopped. There. At the edge of the water. A shape. Faint. Almost lost in the reflection. But not enough. A large dog. Standing still. Ears forward. Body angled slightly toward the open water. Not drinking. Not moving. Watching. Jack's breath slowed. He didn't call out. Didn't move closer. He just stood there. The distance between them held. 50 yards. Maybe more. The dog didn't turn. Didn't react. But something shifted. A slight tilt of the head. A change in posture. Recognition. Jack felt it before he saw it. The line of the back. The set of the shoulders. The way the weight balanced forward. Not relaxed. Not tense. Ready. Shadow. 5 years. 5 years of movement, of fragments, of absence. And now, not gone, not imagined. Standing there, real. Jack took one step forward. The dog moved, not toward him, not away. Just a shift, a repositioning, between Jack and the tree line behind him. Jack stopped. His eyes narrowed slightly. That wasn't fear. That wasn't hesitation. That was placement. Shadow wasn't reacting to him. He was accounting for something else. Jack's gaze shifted past the dog, into the trees. Nothing visible. No movement. But the feeling remained. Presence. Low. Hidden. Watching. Jack's hand lowered slightly. Open. Empty. Not reaching. Not calling. Just there. Shadow turned his head then, most slowly. The distance between them collapsed into that single moment. The dog's eyes met his. No barking. No running. No sound. Just recognition. And something else. Something deeper. Something that hadn't been there before. Shadow held his gaze for a long second. Then, he turned away. Not sharply. Not in fear. With purpose. He moved along the edge of the lake, slipping between the trees with the same controlled motion Jack had followed for years. Gone. Just like that. Jack stood there. Didn't move. Didn't follow. Not yet. His eyes stayed on the place where the dog had disappeared, then shifted again. Back to the tree line. The feeling hadn't left. Whoever or whatever was out there. Shadow had accounted for it. Jack exhaled slowly. The light faded further, pulling the color out of the world. But he turned back toward the trail, walked out the same way he came, each step measured, each breath controlled. When he reached the truck, he didn't get in right away. He stood beside it, looking back toward the forest. 5 years, and the first real sight wasn't a reunion. It was a question. Jack opened the door and got in. The notebook came out again. His hand moved across the page. New entry, Oregon, Lake Trail. Visual confirmation, alive. Condition, strong. Behavior, controlled, aware. Additional presence, unknown. He paused, then added one more line. Did not approach. He closed the notebook, set it down. His eyes lifted toward the darkening road ahead. for the first time. The search had changed. It wasn't about finding Shadow anymore. It was about understanding why he hadn't come back. Morning came slow over the mountains. Not bright, not clean, muted, like the light itself was holding something back. Jack was already awake when it arrived. He hadn't slept. Not really. Just closed his eyes for a while in the truck, engine off, listening to the quiet settle and shift around him. Every sound meant something now. Every absence meant more. He stepped out just before sunrise. The air carried that same stillness from the night before, but now it felt tighter, focused. Jack didn't go straight to the trail. He waited, watched the town wake up. A man opened the diner door and swept the front step. A woman crossed the street carrying a crate of supplies. A truck passed slowly, tires crunching gravel. Routine, predictable, safe. None of it mattered. Jack turned toward the north road, and toward the place the clerk had pointed out, toward where Shadow had gone. The trail looked different in daylight. Clearer, but not easier. Jack moved into it without hesitation, his pace steady, controlled, not searching anymore, tracking. The difference mattered. The ground told him more now. Subtle disturbances, broken lines, faint impressions that only held shape when you looked at them from the right angle. Shadow had passed through here again, recently, not running, not hiding, moving. Jack followed. The trees thinned as the trail climbed, opening into a higher stretch of land where the forest gave way to scattered clearings and old timber lines. And then, the cabin. It didn't stand out at first. It blended into the land like it had grown there instead of being built. Weathered wood, low roof, a smoke rising faintly from a metal pipe. Nothing about it invited attention. Nothing about it needed to. Jack stopped at the edge of the clearing. Didn't step forward. His eyes moved first. Windows, door, tree line. No movement. But the feeling was there again. Presence. Not hidden, not aggressive. Just there. Jack stepped into the clearing. One step, then another. The ground under his boots felt solid, packed, used, not abandoned, not empty. He moved closer. The cabin door stood closed, no sound from inside. But something shifted. A low movement to the left. Jack's head turned. Shadow stepped out from behind the side of the cabin. Not sudden, not reactive, deliberate. 5 years had changed him. That was the first thing Jack saw. Not weaker, not broken, stronger. The dog's body had filled out. A muscle layered over muscle in a way that came from survival, not training. His coat was thicker, darker along the back, lighter along the legs where the sun had touched him more often. There were scars, small, faint, but there. His stance was different too. Lower, balanced, not waiting for command, operating on his own. Shadow stopped halfway between the cabin and Jack. The distance held. 20 feet. Maybe less. Jack didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't reach. He just stood there. The air between them tightened. Shadow's ears stayed forward. His eyes locked onto Jack's. Recognition hit first. Clear. Immediate. Undeniable. But it didn't bring movement. Didn't bring the rush Jack had imagined more times than he could count. Instead, it brought stillness. Shadow took one step forward, then stopped, while his weight shifted slightly. Not toward Jack, sideways. Jack's eyes narrowed. Positioning. The dog wasn't approaching. He was placing himself between Jack and the cabin. Jack felt it then. The shift. This wasn't a reunion. This was something else. A door creaked open behind Shadow. Jack's gaze lifted. An old man stepped out onto the porch. Slow, measured. Like every movement had to be considered before it happened. He was tall once. Still was, in a way. But time had bent him slightly at the shoulders. His beard was gray, thick but uneven. His clothes were simple. Flannel shirt, worn jacket, boots that had seen too many seasons to count. His eyes were sharp, clear. They moved from Jack to Shadow, then back again. "You've been asking about him," the man said. His voice was rough, but steady. Well, Jack didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on Shadow. "He's mine," Jack said finally. The words didn't come out loud. They didn't need to. The old man nodded once. "Figured as much," he said. Shadow didn't move, didn't look back at the man, didn't step toward Jack. He stayed exactly where he was, in the middle. Jack took a slow breath. "He's been with you," he said. The old man leaned slightly against the doorframe. "Long enough," he replied. Jack's jaw tightened. Shadow's ears flicked slightly, reacting. Not to the words, to the tone. Jack caught that, filed it, adjusted. He shifted his stance just enough to change the angle. Less direct, less pressure. Shadow's posture eased. Barely, but it was there. Jack saw it. The old man watched that exchange without speaking. Then he said, He didn't come easy." Jack's eyes flicked toward him. The man stepped off the porch slowly. "He showed up near dead," he continued. "Middle of winter. Couldn't stand right. Wouldn't let me near him." Jack's chest tightened. "But he stayed," the man said. "Wouldn't leave the property. Slept by the door. Watched the trees like something was still out there." Shadow shifted slightly again. Closer to Jack. Not by much, but enough. Jack didn't move. Didn't reach. Didn't call his name. The old man looked at the dog, then back at Jack. "He's not lost," he said. Jack nodded once. "I know," he replied. Silence stretched between them, the kind that held weight. Then the old man said something that settled deeper than anything else. "He stayed." Jack's eyes moved back to Shadow. The dog met his gaze again, steady, unwavering, and for the first time, Jack understood. Shadow hadn't been trying to get back. He had been choosing where to be. Jack exhaled slowly. The tension in his shoulders didn't drop. It shifted, changed shape. This wasn't about finding him anymore, not even about bringing him back. This was something else entirely, something harder. Shadow took one more step forward, then stopped again. Still between them, still holding that line. Jack stood there, not moving, not speaking, because now there was only one thing left to see, what the dog would do next. But nothing happened, not right away. Shadow didn't run, didn't retreat, didn't close the distance either. He stayed exactly where he was, holding that space between them like it mattered. Jack felt the old instinct rise in his chest. Pressure. Action. That resolved the situation. But this wasn't a clearing in Afghanistan. There was no command to give, no objective to secure, only a dog, and a truth he couldn't force. Jack slowly lowered himself down, not fully kneeling, not surrendering, just changing his level, less threat, less weight in the air. Shadow's ears twitched. His posture eased, barely, but enough to be seen. The old man noticed. "Smart," he muttered under his breath. Jack didn't look at him. His focus stayed on Shadow, on the small signals, the breathing, the weight shift, the decision forming behind the dog's eyes. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time didn't move the same here. Finally, the old man stepped forward, slow, careful, not trying to take control, just entering the space. "He's called Shadow?" he asked. Jack nodded, and the man looked at the dog. "Figures," he said. There was no sarcasm in it, just observation. "He don't act like a name matters much to him anymore," the man added. Jack's jaw tightened slightly. "He remembers," Jack said. The man gave a small nod. "Yeah," he said. "That's the problem." Silence again. Then the old man spoke, this time not to fill space but to place something in it. I found him at the edge of a logging road, he said. Late winter. Snow was deep enough to swallow tracks by morning. Jack listened, didn't interrupt. Front leg torn up, the man continued. Not clean. Looked like he jumped from something moving. Jack's fingers curled slightly at his side. Truck? He asked. The old man shrugged. Maybe, he said. Or got pushed. Shadow shifted at that. Just a flicker. But it was there. Jack caught it, logged it, didn't react. He didn't trust me, the man went on. Wouldn't let me near him. Slept 10 feet from the cabin door for 3 nights. Wouldn't eat unless I backed off. Jack's throat tightened. That tracked. Shadow didn't take help. He assessed it. Slowly. 4th night, the man said. Storm rolled in. Bad one. Wind like it was trying to take the trees with it. He paused, looked at Shadow. That's when he moved closer. Jack exhaled slowly. Didn't come inside, the man said. Just stayed by the door, like he was guarding it. Jack closed his eyes for a second. Not long, just enough. Shadow had done that before. Same pattern, same instinct. He stayed like that for weeks, the man continued. Wouldn't sleep deep, always half up, always listening. Jack opened his eyes again, and Shadow was still watching him, still measuring. He ever try to leave? Jack asked. The old man shook his head. Not once, he said. He'd walk the perimeter, go out into the trees, but he always came back. Jack looked at the ground between them, then back at the dog. He wasn't trying to get home, Jack said quietly. The words sat heavy. The old man didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was softer. No, he said. He was trying to survive. That landed differently, sharper, cleaner. Jack absorbed it, didn't argue, because it was true. The old man stepped a little closer. Not enough to break the line, just enough to be part of it. I didn't name him, he said. Didn't try to make him something else. Jack glanced at him. Why not? He asked. The man shrugged. Because he wasn't empty, he said. He already belonged to something. Jack looked back at Shadow. The dog's eyes hadn't left him. He just stayed, the man added. And I let him. There was no pride in that. No claim. Just fact. Jack took a slow breath. The air felt thinner now, not from altitude, from what was being understood. He shifted slightly. Careful. Measured. Shadow responded instantly. 1 step forward. Small, but real. Jack stopped moving. Let it happen. The distance closed by inches. Nothing more. The old man watched it. Didn't interfere. Didn't speak. Because he knew this part didn't belong to him. Name's Caleb, he said finally. Caleb Turner. Jack nodded once. Jack Mercer. Caleb gave a short, almost amused exhale. Figured you'd have a name like that, he said. Jack didn't respond. Didn't need to. And Caleb's eyes softened slightly as he looked at Shadow. He saved me, Caleb said. Jack looked at him. Caleb didn't look back. He don't know it, he added. But he did. Jack said nothing. Because he understood. Some things didn't need to be explained. Shadow shifted again. Closer. Now just a few feet away. Jack could see everything clearly. The scars along the leg. The faint graying at the muzzle. The weight he carried differently now. Not a trained dog. Not just a companion. Something else. Something earned. Jack slowly lowered his hand. Not reaching. Just placing it in the space. Palm open. Still. Shadow's head tilted slightly. He stepped forward. 1 more step. Then stopped again. His nose lifted, testing the air, testing memory. Jack didn't move, didn't breathe deeper, didn't speak. The dog leaned forward, inched closer, Then stopped, turned his head, looked back at Caleb. Not long. Just a glance, but it was enough. Jack saw it. That connection. That second anchor. Shadow looked back at him again, and in that moment, Jack understood the shape of the problem. This wasn't about losing him once. It was about losing him twice. Or not losing him at all. Just sharing him. Shadow took one final step, close enough now that Jack could feel the warmth of him, close enough that 5 years disappeared for a second. But still, not touching. Not yet. Jack's hand remained where it was, waiting. Because now, it wasn't his move anymore. Jack didn't move his hand, didn't close the distance, didn't call the dog's name again. He let the moment sit exactly where it was, fragile, balanced, real. Oh, Shadow stood there, close enough that Jack could see the small twitch in the muscles along his jaw, close enough to hear the quiet rhythm of his breathing, but still not touching. The air felt tight, not with tension, with weight. 5 years of distance compressed into a space no wider than a few feet. Shadow lowered his head slightly. His nose moved forward, slow, deliberate, then stopped, again. Jack didn't flinch, didn't lean in. He stayed where he was, because he understood something now he hadn't before. This wasn't about being recognized. It was about being chosen. Shadow shifted, not toward Jack, back. One step. Then he turned, moved toward Caleb. Jack felt it, not as a loss, as a test. Shadow reached Caleb and pressed lightly against his leg. Not dramatic, not desperate. Familiar. Yet Caleb's hand came down without thinking, resting on the dog's neck, fingers settling into the fur like they had done 1,000 times before. Neither man spoke. They didn't need to. The meaning was clear. Shadow hadn't forgotten, but he hadn't been waiting either. He had built something here, something real. Shadow stayed there for a moment. Then he stepped away, turned back toward Jack, walked forward again. Closer this time, more certain. Jack's hand was still there, open, waiting. Shadow approached until the distance was gone. His nose touched Jack's palm. Light. Barely there. But enough. Jack felt it hit him harder than anything else had. He didn't grab, didn't pull. He let his fingers close slowly, gently, into the fur at the side of Shadow's muzzle. The dog didn't pull away, didn't push forward, but he stayed, balanced between them. Jack exhaled, a long breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His other hand came up, resting lightly along Shadow's neck. Familiar, but different. There was weight there now. History. Time. Shadow shifted again, his body angled slightly, not fully toward Jack, not fully toward Caleb. Between. Always between. Jack felt it clearly now. The dog wasn't confused. He was holding both. Caleb stepped back. Not far. Just enough to give the space meaning. He's telling you something, Caleb said quietly. Jack didn't look at him. I know, he replied. Shadow stepped away from Jack again, walked a few feet out into the clearing, stopped, looked back, at both of them, then sat, not close to either, centered, watching, waiting. Jack stood slowly. The movement was controlled, deliberate. No urgency, no demand. Caleb stayed where he was, hands at his sides now. The three of them held that triangle of space, silent, clear. Jack took a step back. Just one. Shadow's ears moved, his head followed. Jack didn't say a word. He turned slightly. Not leaving. Not yet. Just shifting. Shadow stood, walked toward him. 2 steps, then stopped again. Jack felt it settle. The answer wasn't in a single moment. It was in the pattern. Shadow went back to Caleb, pressed his head briefly against the old man's side. Caleb's hand rested there, steady, quiet. Then the dog pulled away, turned, and this time, he didn't stop. He walked straight to Jack, closed the distance, and leaned into him. Full weight. No hesitation. Jack's hand came up instinctively, gripping the fur at the back of his neck, holding him there. Not tight, not forcing, just anchoring. Shadow stayed, breathing steady, present. But even then, his eyes shifted. Back to Caleb. Not leaving him, not abandoning him, holding him in the same space. Jack saw it, understood it, felt it. This wasn't a return, not the kind he had imagined. It was something harder, something better. Jack loosened his grip slightly, ran his hand once along Shadow's back, slow, familiar, then let it rest there. "He's yours," Caleb said quietly. Jack shook his head. "No," he said. The word came out steady, certain. "He's not." Caleb looked at him. Jack met his gaze. "He chose," Jack added. Caleb exhaled slowly. There was no argument in him, no resistance, just something settling, something letting go. Shadow shifted again. But this time, he stayed with Jack. Not pulled, not commanded, just there. Jack looked down at him, then back at Caleb. "We're not leaving," Jack said. Caleb frowned slightly. Jack nodded once. "I'm not taking him away from here," he continued. "Not from you." Caleb's eyes searched his face. For weakness, for doubt. Didn't find it. "You sure about that?" he asked. Jack glanced at Shadow, then back at the cabin, at the land, at everything that had kept the dog alive. "I didn't come 5 years to take something," Jack said. "I came to find him." He paused, then added quieter. "I found him." The wind moved lightly through the trees. The clearing shifted with it. Something eased, not resolved, not finished, but understood. Shadow settled at Jack's side. Not watching, not guarding. Just there. And for the first time, he didn't look like he was waiting for something to happen. He looked like he had already decided. The first night was quiet. Not the kind of quiet Jack had lived with for years. The empty kind that pressed in from all sides. This one had weight to it. Presence. Shadow lay on the wooden floor near the small stove, his body stretched out but not tense, not coiled like it used to be. Just resting. Jack sat in the chair by the window, watching the last light fade through the trees. He hadn't asked to stay. Caleb hadn't asked him to leave. The arrangement had formed the same way everything else had between them. Without force. Without words that tried too hard. The cabin felt smaller now. Not because of space, because it held more. Jack shifted slightly in the chair. The wood creaked when Shadow's ear flicked. Just once, then settled again. Jack noticed that, filed it, but didn't react. He had spent years living in reaction. Now, he let things be. Outside, the wind moved through the pines in slow, steady passes. No sudden shifts, no sharp sounds. Just a constant, low rhythm. For the first time in a long time, it didn't pull him somewhere else. Didn't drag him back into noise and memory. It stayed where it was. Jack leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. Across the room, Caleb poured coffee into 2 mismatched mugs. "You always sit like that?" Caleb asked. Jack didn't look up. "Yeah." Caleb handed him one of the mugs. Jack took it. The heat settled into his hands. Caleb sat down across from him, slower than before, one hand bracing slightly on the table. Neither of them spoke for a while. Well, they didn't need to. Shadow shifted once on the floor. rolled slightly onto his side. A deeper breath left him. Jack noticed something then. Something small. But it hit harder than anything else had. The dog wasn't listening for danger. He wasn't tracking the edges of the room. He wasn't waiting. He was sleeping. Not the light, fractured rest Jack had seen for years. Real sleep. The kind that comes when something finally lets go. Jack sat back slowly. The chair creaked again. Shadow didn't move this time. Didn't react. Didn't wake. Jack looked at Caleb. The old man had seen it too. First time he's done that? Jack asked quietly. Caleb nodded once. Yeah, he said. First time. Jack looked back at the dog. Didn't smile. Didn't say anything. But something in his chest shifted. Not relief, not exactly. But something deeper. Something that didn't have a word. Morning came differently here. No alarms. No engines. Just light. Soft at first. Then growing. Jack stepped outside before the sun fully cleared the ridge. The air was cold enough to wake him, but not harsh. Just sharp. Clean. Shadow followed a few seconds later. Not rushing. Not checking. Just moving. He stepped onto the porch, stretched once, then came to stand beside Jack. Not in front. Not behind. Beside. Jack glanced down. Shadow's eyes were on the trees. Not scanning. Just looking. The way a creature looks at a place it knows. Caleb came out after them. He moved slower this morning. More careful. But steady. He stopped at the edge of the porch. Looked out over the land. You staying? He asked. Jack didn't answer right away, and his eyes moved across the clearing. The trail. The trees beyond. The direction he had come from. 5 years of roads, of movement, of never stopping. He looked down at Shadow. The dog didn't look back. Didn't need to. Jack exhaled slowly. Yeah, he said. Caleb nodded once. Didn't push it further. The days that followed didn't change everything at once. They didn't need to. Jack found a small place in town. Not much. Just enough. He fixed the broken boards. Repaired the door. Cleaned out what needed cleaning. Simple work. The kind that didn't ask questions. Shadow moved between the two places. Morning with Jack. Afternoon sometimes at Caleb's. Evenings often back again. No commands, no schedule. Just choice, and every time, he came back. Jack didn't follow him anymore. Didn't track his movement. It didn't measure the distance. He let it happen. Because he understood now. The dog wasn't leaving. He was living. The town adjusted. People noticed. Then stopped noticing. Jack took small jobs, helped where needed, fixed things, kept to himself. But not the way he used to. There was space now, room for something else. At the sheriff's office, he helped once when a search ran late into the evening. Didn't take charge. Didn't step forward. Just moved when needed. Clean. Efficient. Done. Shadow worked beside him without being asked. Reading movement. Adjusting. Always there. One night, back at the cabin, the three of them sat outside. No fire, just the fading light. Shadow lay stretched across the boards between them. Not centered. Not dividing. Just resting. Caleb reached down, and resting a hand lightly against the dog's back. Jack did the same from the other side. No tension. No hesitation. Just contact. Shared. The sky darkened slowly. Stars coming through one at a time. The lake below reflecting pieces of it back. Jack leaned back in his chair. For the first time in years. He wasn't thinking about where to go next. Wasn't mapping roads. Wasn't tracking movement. He was just there. Shadow's breathing stayed slow. Even. Deep. Jack closed his eyes for a second. Not long. Just enough. No flash. No noise. No pull. Just quiet. He opened them again, looked out over the trees, then down at the dog. 5 years. 5 winters. 5 years of searching for something he thought he had lost. He hadn't gotten it back the way he expected. He hadn't found the version he left behind, but he found something else. Something stronger. Something that had survived without him, and still came back. Not because it had to, because it chose to. Jack rested his hand lightly on Shadow's side, felt the rise and fall of each breath. Steady. Real. Here. And for the first time since the morning the house had gone silent, he didn't feel like something was missing. He felt like something had returned. Not perfectly, not unchanged, but real enough to stay. And that was enough. If this story stayed with you, don't just scroll past it. Drop a simple 1 in the comments if you believe loyalty like this still exists, or a 0 if you think nothing ever truly comes back the same. I read every single one, and if you're still here, watching till the very end, this channel is for you. Hit subscribe, and I'll bring you more stories like this, the kind that don't just pass time, they stay with you long after they're over.